Welcome to the session, everyone. I'm Haripriya Vellodi, and this is Ishtha. We're coming from Parallel, a design agency based out of Bangalore. Chances are, if you haven't heard of us, you probably still have an app on your phone that we've probably designed. So when we got together with ASCI to learn about what's next for advertising, we also had access to a lot of experts in this room, and this led us to certain findings that we would be presenting today. What we initially noticed about AI and the perceptions of AI within the industry, we can summarize them in 3 keywords: creativity, technology, and responsibility. You'll see these 3 key aspects flow across the themes that we've explored on the report. And we all know AI is not a buzzword anymore. It's a huge technological advancement that is really shaping and defining the industry right now. So before we get into the key findings, we thought we'll do a quick recap of how advertising has evolved. To get started, in the Indian context, in 1780, we saw the first published advertisement. It was on a classifieds section of Bengal Gazette published in Calcutta. 120 years later, we saw an ad agency being established in India. This also meant that we were able to define best practices and look at advertising as an independent sector. And to add to this, we saw cultural shift in communication, and this also means the formalization of industries related to communication design, like graphic design, typography, illustration. Now, in 1976, we're already at a place where radio and television are at play. So we're looking at advertising in motion right now. There are jingles being made. So we're using sound, audiovisual, and exploring how we can sell to the Indian market. Surprisingly, we were 30 years behind New York when we achieved this, because the first ever ad that was aired on television was in 1941 for Bulova watches in New York. So we were wondering why it took us 30 years to catch up with them. But surprisingly, India is actually paving the way when it comes to AI and advertising. So here we have a case where a global star like Shah Rukh Khan is promoting hundreds of small businesses, and this was a campaign enabled by AI. So the future is already here. And before we get into AI, I want to see how familiar we are with AI as a tool. So raise your hands if you've used AI at your work. It can be for something as simple as drafting a mail or actually creating project plans for yourself. Not bad. This is higher than what we anticipated. So AI is very much a part of our lives right now. But interestingly, the impact of AI in advertising is very, very nuanced. And that is what we'll be seeing on our study right now. Ishtha will take you through the methodology, and we can start looking at the key findings.
So a quick glimpse into how we did this. So we spoke to a total of 21 experts. So think of these as 14 conversations, a mixture of one-on-one interviews, focus groups, also supported heavily through rigorous secondary research on the current landscape of advertising. Now, when we're talking about who these experts were, who were we speaking to, we managed to actually cut across 11 cohorts. Small businesses, big businesses, tech, legal, consumer organizations. We were really able to go into the length and depth of the industry and be able to get very hands-on, on-the-ground views of the current landscape. Now, the current research is a 2-part document, where part A is a cohesive list of insights that we've gotten through the research, and part B is heavily supported by articles that are written by these thought experts who are shaping the way that advertising industry is moving forward. The idea for this comprehensive report that's come together is to get the conversation started around use of AI in advertising. Now, also to keep consistency in all the conversations that we have had across these cohorts, we focused on 4 key questions. These questions were, what are the sentiments around AI? How is the industry perceiving AI? 2, how are we adopting it? The third is, what are we doing about consumers when it comes to such a tech revolution? How are we addressing that? And the fourth one is, how are we ensuring responsible AI integration? So let's break that down and dive into the first bit, which is perception of AI. How is the industry viewing this? So within this theme, the three key sentiments that came up was optimism around workflows, personalization, being able to use AI. There was also a lot of sentiment around the speed at which the content can be generated and you can reach out to the right relevant audience for your brand. And the third piece was around the need for balance between integration responsibly while we are doing personalization. Now, a quick bit about optimism that the industry is feeling. We all know India is quite a diverse and fragmented market. So when you're able to pull out AI-driven insights that are very particular to certain consumers or groups, this is incredibly useful for brands. It allows them to maximize the return on their investments. And when it comes to personalization, this is a brilliant example that we got. Something as simple and commonly used as a happy birthday song, probably sung in the same way throughout the world, can even be personalized for an individual. That is literally the way in which brands are able to leverage AI and create personalized content. So when we're able to bring together machine learning and data analytics, brands are able to create very relevant content and push the boundaries of creativity and personalization. From mere marketing opportunities, they are able to create interactive experiences for users. Now, quick bit on the speed aspect. Imagine being able to make 500,000 animated videos. It's an absolutely impossible task otherwise. But this is literally, the way it's come out perfectly, this is literally the power and scale of being able to leverage AI. So when you're able to automate content summarization or adaptation of marketing material, you're able to free up a lot of team tasks that are routine. You're able to get more time to be able to spend on creative pursuits. So what this is letting you do by increasing speed is being able to focus on creative design. And when very human, expert insights are met with AI enhancements, what you get is content that is extremely deeply relevant and engaging for users. And the third bit that is the part of perception of AI is this need to balance responsible integration with personalization. And as you can see from what our experts have spoken about, this needs to be a collaborative effort. It's not the responsibility or seen as a responsibility of a single brand. It's what all stakeholders need to do together. And when we're talking about responsibility in AI integration, we are not just talking about deployment of AI. We are talking very much about development of AI tools that are entering this market space.
So we looked at three sentiments around AI. There's optimism around efficiency, automation. There's also the possibility of speed and rapid development in terms of creative design. And we know that there's a need for a balanced approach between responsibility and innovation. So having this in mind, let's look at how the industry is adopting and integrating AI in their systems. We noticed three patterns across sectors. The first is a native advantage that digital-first industries have because they have access to structured, robust data architecture. The second is about how this technological advancement is actually bringing a lot of democracy in this industry. So SMEs and other traditional industries that were probably at a technological disadvantage earlier have now accessed AI and Gen AI especially, and this levels the playing field. Interestingly, the good news is that there's a lot of investment in AI that is expected over the next decade. So let's look at how each of these insights were derived. So one of our experts brought up this interesting instance where data and organized data, especially within industries like e-commerce, can lead to use cases from user personalization and user behavior analysis right until transaction deals. But we also need to adhere to the fact that AI is still in an experimentation phase right now. So there was this Statista report that was published in 2023, which talked about how the 42% of respondent organizations are still in an AI experimentation phase. This means that a lot of use cases are still arising. They're still trying to figure out what are the best ways to integrate and apply AI as a tool in their systems. So while we're looking at these big industries that have organized data, we're also noticing instances where MSMEs and other traditional sectors are actually able to leverage the potential of AI and reduce costs on most of their ad workflows. So they're able to achieve higher input at reduced fractional cost of their traditional methods. So while we're looking at tech democracy, we also need to acknowledge that these industry experts are also trying to promote the idea of having a data-driven culture. So imagine an advertising industry that is able to rely on organized data and structured data that not just focuses on quality, but also quantity of data. Over the next decade, we're expecting a sudden boost in the investments in AI. And one of our experts actually brought in an interesting instance where they were able to collaborate with some of their partners and vendors to come up with better strategies. So if you have partners within your business or your sector who have organized data and are able to come up with strategies to integrate data, this would be a great opportunity for you to collaborate with them. So we've seen some perspectives from the industry so far. Let's see where the consumer lies within this equation.
When it comes to consumers or consumer centricity, the learnings were revolving around, again, three key aspects. One, that actually Indians show very strong confidence when it comes to digital systems and adoption of digital solutions. The second is an important piece around the need for consumer education. And this piece has a lot of potential for brands to develop loyalty with their consumer base. And the third aspect is building trust with their consumers through transparency around AI integration. So let's look into that. The first piece around Indians being front runners, I think there is no one here who would not be using UPI. And that, I think, is an excellent use case to show how quickly Indian audience and Indian market adopts digital solutions and trusts digital systems. And why is that? That is, in a very great sense, a reason for that is when government sets certain structures in place that allows for standardized integration, it leads to more successful adoption. And when there is more successful adoption, consumer confidence in that technology really soars. So what this gets us to is a thriving ecosystem of digital innovation that consumers are happy to trust. An interesting statistic that we heard about, or that we got through during secondary research, was 48% of Indian consumers are trusting of AI-generated promotions and deals compared to 23% of their global counterparts. And an astounding 89% of Indian consumers are happy to receive AI-generated purchase recommendations, shopping recommendations, compared to 58% of their global counterparts. So that is exactly what consumer confidence in AI looks like. Having said that, an interesting piece that we discovered during this research was the need for education and awareness for users to understand safe practices, potential misconceptions. Now, we understand the challenge to be able to educate such a vast democracy is huge, but the gains are absolutely worth it. So when we are talking about education for consumers, we mean very on-ground drives, educational drives, that are catering to the entire demographic and are created for their specific AI literacy needs. Now, every day, consumers are using AI tools without completely understanding how it works. And this education piece is a very powerful potential for brands to create loyalty with their consumer base and move out of this perception of just being service providers to become actually trusted advisors of their consumers around the piece of AI literacy. And the third and equally important part is creating trust with consumers through transparency around AI integration. Now, Another important piece is many times users or consumers are not completely sure or cannot differentiate between AI-generated content and more authentic content, and that leads to a level of skepticism. So it's very important to avoid this skepticism, but not at the cost of overburdening users. So even extensive labeling is something that can backfire. So the interesting piece that we learned was that the key is to do contextual and risk-based disclosure so that you're able to maintain a level of trust with your consumer, but you're not causing label fatigue or overburdening them with information.
So we've been through 3 themes so far: perception of AI, industry adoption and readiness, and consumer centricity. Our last theme here is about responsible AI integration. So how do we get started by creating certain guidelines or a playbook that the industry would be able to use across this diverse range of sectors that we're looking at? So we realize that there are 3 themes that these guidelines could follow. One is to ensure that these are principle-led. So use cases may differ across sectors, but if you have principle-led frameworks that are developed for the industry, it also leads us to an agile framework which is relevant across sectors and across use cases. And finally, self-regulation is going to be the big game changer in the next phase of AI in advertising. So we also noticed that a lot of experts were coming up with this sentiment of acknowledging and also understanding the need for responsibility when it comes to innovation with technology. And a lot of them emphasize that it needs to be a risk-based approach, which means that if there are high-risk sectors like health or finance, the guidelines that apply to them may not be the same that may be applicable to SMEs or other traditional sectors. So we started developing these principle-led guidelines, and on this report, you would be able to see 6 of them. So what's interesting is that this industry will keep evolving, but these norms, if they're principle-led, they can ensure that going ahead, we would still be able to stick to these. And one of our experts also brought up this case where statutory guidelines and frameworks and regulatory norms are actually spread across different applications and different use cases, but unifying them together to put one framework out there will help in this case of agility as well. So as we've been seeing so far about strategic partnerships within your teams, as well as collaborating with researchers, industry experts, government organizations, and user or consumer organizations would be highly beneficial at this point. Now, when it comes to self-regulation, as businesses, if you start laying your internal policies in place, this will also give you a competitive edge, and it gives the industry some starting point to be able to come up with regulations or guidelines that are applicable for your industry. So these experts have actually laid the starting line for us to understand how AI can be integrated and can boost the advertising industry. Our takeaways can be taken back to our timeline. Currently, we're at a place where we're seeing optimism from the industry. There's great accessibility for tech innovation for industries and sectors like SMEs that have always been at a technological disadvantage. We're also seeing consumer confidence. And lastly, the attitude towards responsibility from the entire industry is very promising. But in the future, we're looking forward to 4 scenarios. One is where there are agile frameworks for responsible integration. We're also seeing brands taking up the stance to be able to come up with more on-ground drives for AI literacy within their consumers. Definitely more research like ours to be able to study the Indian audience, the Indian market, user behavior, and AI's potential. Lastly, the good news is we're looking at potential in active investments. This is also a good point for us to take a pause and understand that this space will continue evolving. Multi-perspective studies like ours will continue happening. And definitely having robust data architecture is a great way for the advertising industry to be able to boost its potential. And our journey with AI has just begun. Thank you.